Welcome to the Penny Stamps Distinguished Speaker Series. My name is Rebecca Modrak. I'm professor at the Stamps School of Art and Design. Today, we begin the Winter Series program with performance artist Ayana Evans. First, I thank you to our partner, the Arts Initiative, for their support, and a big thanks to our streaming partners, Detroit Public Television and PBS Books. As a follow-up to today's conversation, please join Ayana Evans for a live virtual discussion and Q&A on Monday, January 25th, 5:30 p.m. with Reginald Jackson, Director of the Center for Japanese Studies at the University of Michigan and scholar of race and gender's relationship to performance. This program is part of the Arts Initiative series, The Future of Art. Everyone is free to join this discussion, and you'll find details and information on how to join the event at pennystampsevents.org. Before we join Ayana Evans today, a few words of introduction. Ayana Evans is a New York City-based performance artist who grew up on the South Side of Chicago. The sensibilities of Chicago and Brown University, where she earned her BA in visual arts, heavily influenced her work with the body, race relations, and gender bias. In addition to her numerous guerrilla street performances, Evans has performed at the Queens Museum, Crystal Bridges Museum, Newark Museum, and the Bronx Museum. A common theme in her performance work is Ayana's willingness to put her body at risk to critique culture and increase human interconnectedness, and her determination to use her work to ask for, or rather to demand, that audiences pay attention to the labor involved in being a Black woman. This is an important strategy, and I hope students' ears are perking up for this. Ayana Evans uses her work as an artist as opportunity or permission to be fully herself. In her work, she dismantles hierarchies, empowers collective action, and makes her body, her presence, more visible. Whether crawling upstairs backwards, challenging audience members to do push-ups with her, or impelling people to cluster together to form a solid beltway for passing her body through the gallery, Ayana uses her body to express discomfort and joy. Social barriers collapse, audience members choose to become participants embroiled in collective action, or maybe they do nothing. The improvisation of performance work is a key factor here. Alfred Jaffa described improvisation as, quote, first and foremost signified self-determination. He said, for the Black jazz artist to stand before an audience, often white, and to publicly demonstrate her decision-making capacity, her agency, rather than the replication of another's agency like the composer's, was a profoundly radical and dissonant gesture. Now imagine improvisation that makes physical and emotional demands of its own audience. During autumn of the pandemic, Ayana joined the Stamp School as a short-term Roman J. Witt visiting artist, working virtually with my wearable art class, Dressing Up and Down. Ayana drafted illustrations of costumes for the dressing up students to construct. She brought 28 of us together on a football field to create a new performance. 4 School of Music, Theater, and Dance vocalists, 3 dancers from Detroit, 5 members of the University of Michigan cheer team, 9 wearable arts students from Stamps, 2 videographers, 3 sound editors, myself, and Ayana, who was in New York at the time, but beamed through to us in Ann Arbor synchronously to direct the performance through FaceTime. We stepped onto Elbel Field on October 25th with a sense of the work's components, but not really knowing what would happen. Ayana asked us to trust each other and responses in the moment. Tonight, you'll be the first to see the video performance, as this is the premiere. A special thank you to Arts at Michigan, the Stamp School, the University of Michigan Museum of Art, and the Office of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion for supporting this work. And now, turning it over to Ayana, we'll begin with a short film of one of her street performances, Which Bridges to Cross and Which to Burn.
Oh wait, I'm messing up, I'm sorry. Hi, I'm Ayana Evans. I'm a performance artist, originally from Chicago, born in Cleveland, but raised in Chicago. I currently teach at Brown University part-time, live in New York, and I think I'm a little wild. That's who I am, that's where we're at. So the goal was for me just to be an artist, like a painter. So my MFA is in painting. And I did that for a little bit. I decided to switch and go into fashion. So then I went to FIT. I had a small handbag company for a little while, about 7 years. And it did pretty good. You know, some celebrities wore the stuff. I got into some magazines. I kind of missed art and I had to go back to it. But I didn't want to go back to painting. Painting wasn't what I wanted anymore. And so I had to figure out something else. And in figuring it out, and also trying to figure out the art scene all over again, I ended up discovering performance art. And so I started going to a lot of underground performance art shows. Just going to shows. Like I always tell people, my education in performance art is super DIY. Like I went to like 3 shows easy in one night. I would go to probably 4 or 5 within the week. I'd go to Queens, bounce down to Brooklyn, then go to something else in Manhattan. And slowly I started thinking, well, I'll do something. And so I said I was gonna do a social experiment. I wanted to wear whatever I wanted because I've been going to art shows that were for painters and stuff. I didn't fit in. I didn't fit in because I looked like a fashion person at an art show. And I was self-conscious about that. So I had a friend that said, you should just say F it and wear whatever you want. And then she recommended that I talk to this girl, Tiffany Rhodes, who designs Butch Diva. And their tagline is spandex and chaos. And I was like, that's for me. So I went and I got my first cat suit from her. Actually, I borrowed it. It was not supposed to be a forever thing. And so 2 of my designer friends came with me with their cell phones. And we recorded what happened when I walked through the museum in a neon bodysuit. And I picked the colors like a painter. Like I wanted the green to be against a white background. And I usually wear red lip. And I was thinking about how will that look? The feathers hadn't come in yet. No feathers, no crowns yet. So we do the video, we put it on YouTube. And it takes a year. I did it and it was like, oh my God, there's a big reaction. About a year later, it goes semi-viral. Viral for art is not viral for like other things. Like if I was a makeup viral, it's 1 million views. For art, it's only like 100,000 views. But it's within a niche little community. So I got invited to shows based on that. By then I had done like 5 different videos that were on YouTube. And I was slowly posting more and more. So technically I come from YouTube, which I always think is funny. Even though I have the standard background with Skowhegan and the MFA and that sort of thing. So sometimes people don't realize that social media is kind of where my access comes from and what made it easier for me to re-enter the art world. It's also why my career kind of shifts. If you look at people that are the same age as me or graduated with me, I kind of sit more like a millennial, which is interesting because I think that it actually helped me in the end. But it probably looked like it was harder at first because it's like you're starting out behind everybody, like other people are ahead of you. I think I don't have a lot of pivotal moments, like not like people think. Like in movies, it's like you have this moment where you get the grant and then everything goes well. And I feel like I have a lot of moments that I'm grateful for, but not a lot of pivotal moments. I did a Kickstarter in 2014. That like helped my whole career. It was like for $3,000. That $3,000 made it possible for me to do the first videos I ever did, for me to pay people to shoot for me, for me to actually have like an installation that looked a certain way, and it just kind of opened up things for me. And I think we raised $3,500 instead of $3,000, and that extra $500 seriously pushed me so much further than I would have been without it, because I was dead broke. So it was like that, like, is a pivotal moment. which probably seems mundane, right? It's a Kickstarter. But it totally opened up things for me I never thought would happen. It also exposed me, because you're like calling people and asking for help. And so some people who might not have thought that I was serious about art, all of a sudden are like, oh my God, I didn't know you were doing this. I want to help you. So it shifted everything. My first 2 museum shows, those were a big deal in terms of like kind of solidifying, well, quite frankly, solidifying how much I can charge, but then also solidifying how much respect you get from other artists. So, brief outline, money for me as a performance artist is not the same as if I was a painter. A lot of performance artists start out doing shows for absolutely free, nothing. It's rare that you would put a painter in a show and kind of there's no money involved. Partially because objects cost, and so there's a little different attitude that you get from the galleries. And I start very underground, right? And because I start underground, meaning I'm in scenes where like there might not even be a working toilet, but we're about to all perform there and you're performing for each other. And like, I'm sure it seems and looks cool to an outsider, but it's also very grungy. Within the art world, I would say you go from $25 to $50 a show, right? And you're probably performing at bars and places like that, right? Sometimes you're performing at a place where people aren't paying attention to you, which is great training. I think it's better training than even getting an MFA in performance, because you have to compete with the bar. And I've done more than a couple shows like that. Then the next step is you start getting $100. Then you start getting more gallery and museum stuff. Like, it kind of spills out into the wider art world. When you first hit that, the only thing the museums offered me at first was $150 per show. And then another friend, Zach Fabry, actually told me, you're not getting paid enough. Coming from nothing, not getting paid anything, $150 felt good. So finally, I was able to crack the $500 range, and then when I did my show at the Barnes, they paid me $3,500, and that was my fee, not my budget. And that's something you need to watch out for. Sometimes they tell you that the budget is $10,000, but your fee could be $100 still. So you have to always make sure that you're clear on what's the budget, what's the fee or honorarium, and you always have to kind of negotiate, is this a non-for-profit? Is this for a community organization? Are they telling me the truth about what the budget is? Am I gonna feel bad if I do this and I know that I should have been paid more, even though I need the money? So the Barnes is a pivotal moment, because with them, they asked me to turn in a budget. I turned in a budget. The curator actually told me it was too short, that I hadn't padded it enough, meaning if anything had gone wrong, the budget would have been messed up. And she was right, but they didn't have to do that for me. They could have just kind of let me go. And so I learned a lot from that show, needless to say. By padding, I mean like if it's a rain day and you were supposed to video, do you have enough money to like pay someone to come back the second day? You know what I mean? So things like that come into it. It's a bit like thinking like a production person more than like an art person. I think that shifted things for me, and I didn't see it coming. I didn't understand that people would like then talk about me and say, oh, she was at this, did you see her in that show? And I didn't also understand that because I was one of the least famous people in the show, that proximity matters to people who care about that. So that also helped me in terms of like, oh, you're associated with this type of artist now. So for example, Sanford Biggers was in that show. And I know Sanford now, but at the time, I don't know if we'd had a real conversation yet. So it was interesting to realize when people push you in certain shows, it puts you in certain categories and kind of can up your status. And this is all like within a very superficial world, right? So for some people that doesn't matter, but there are gonna be people that matters for. And some of those people are curators. And those curators put you in more shows with more people at that level. So that was a breakthrough show for me too. And El Museo Del Barrio here in New York, it was the very first museum that ever showed my work. And it was a great experience. I'm still grateful to this day. Those two I would say are the most pivotal. And most recently I was in the New York Times. And I'm gonna tell y'all a secret, I was real naive about that. I took it more like I'm in the local paper. Like, you live in New York, so what paper will you be in? You will be in the Times. And I was very relaxed about it. And then it happened, and I was like, oh, this is a game changer. And I didn't see it coming. So I feel like my pivotal moments, I don't ever see them coming. Like, what I think will be pivotal, like, nothing happened. But like, that was pivotal in that people saw that article and read that article, that I didn't understand how many people were gonna reach out to me because of that. It opened a lot of doors. It still opens doors. I'll go to dinner parties now, and if someone introduces me, that's like the second thing they say. Within an art socializing type environment. Okay, so a huge influence is Lorraine O'Grady, Sir Rodney Sir, Pope L. Those are like some of my faves. Lorraine is like a mentor to me, and so is Sir. And Sir is like a good friend, you know, like not just someone that you could ask about, someone who, quite frankly, I would tell Sir if my heart was broken and just be like, he cute or he's not. And like talking about stuff that's nothing to do with art. Like, that's the homie. So those people are definitely big influences on me. I would say the Fluxus movement is a influence on me, and I think a lot of times people don't see that. They see it, but they don't associate it because I'm Black. And then also the painting definitely affects how I think about texture and color. And the other thing I think that you see in my work pretty consistently is that I think about fashion and pop culture in a way that you might not always see in performance art, but the fashion side of me. And then also, like, heck, I grew up in Chicago. My brother was a rapper. Like, there's certain things about me that are coming through in the work that I think once you know it, you're like, oh, okay, I get it. So I think all of those things are influences, like all of that. So I think I work backwards. I'm very instinctual. And I know a lot of people lately, there's a phrase of, I'm a research-based artist. That's like a thing. I'm not. How about that? So I go backwards, meaning like the jumping jacks piece I have, for instance, I thought about that and I just envisioned it. I'm very good at envisioning how a performance will look and then thinking about how it will feel and hoping that feeling translates to the audience. So I just was like, I want to do this thing. It has to be in a bright dress. It has to have like shiny stuff behind me. And then once I think of the idea, then I think about the why. So I research after I've done it usually. Like, why did I want to do that? What does it mean? What does labor mean? What is the history of labor for Black women in this country? What's the history of labor within my family? What's the history of exercise within my body? And then what does it mean for other people to watch me exercise as a woman? And how does it shift my body? If I'm doing jumping jacks for 2 hours in heels, how does that shift my body? Why does that become part of the art? All of those questions come from me after. The first part is just an instinctual flash of an idea that just comes to me. Going up the stairs backwards with the apples is something that I thought about going up the stairs backwards first. Usually it has to do with where I'm at in my life. So there's personal and political. They're always together in my work. They're always at the same time. And I would say that also discovery for me is in the moment. So while you're with performance art, it is not theater. I feel like I need to say that as like a PSA, because sometimes people kind of want me to rehearse or something, and I'm like, that's not it. I think Marina Abramovic said it best, that in theater the blood is fake, and in performance art the blood is real. And so there's a part of you that has to kind of get into this, you almost go to another space so that you're brave enough and open enough to just channel the energy and do exactly what you want to do in the performance. And I definitely try to purposely be like 120% myself when I perform. There's no filter. And that kind of pushes the work and makes it resonate better, in my opinion. So before COVID, I basically never performed for the camera. I do the performance and the camera has to catch me. And it's funny because the person that's filming this for me, Yusef, has been with me in performances. I'm sure I drive you crazy sometimes because I'll just switch it up mid-performance. I probably should have said that also to you guys earlier. If the energy of the audience is different than I expected, or my day is different than I expected, the performance changes mid-performance. Even though I write down every single thing I'm gonna do, it'll shift mid-performance. So, but I don't care because it's all about the audience and the feeling and the moment. I don't care about the camera. I don't look at the camera. I don't care about if my face is ugly. I don't care if I've like almost hit somebody. None of that matters. And also, I had moved into having a lot of participation in my performances. A lot. Like I would jump and people catch me. And so I just really had started pushing this idea of not just me doing labor in front of the audience, but now the audience does labor for me. I'm asking for what I want. There's a theme of that within the work. With COVID, that kind of had to shift. So now I'm performing for the camera a lot. And I have to remember, like, what's the shot gonna look like? And how can I make you feel what I'm feeling without being there? And so it kind of did shift the work a little bit. But I still have to channel that energy of, it doesn't matter if my face is ugly. What matters is, do you feel the energy and the feeling that I'm trying to express? So it did shift my work. Like I definitely moved into online performances and Instagram lives, which I had never even done before, I don't think. And Zoom performances. And for a Zoom performance, you have to really get to the camera and do all these things. And you have to play with the angles. And so I really had to start doing that. So it did shift the work a little bit. What was interesting is to realize that I started doing quarantine performances because I had been sick with COVID and because I was going crazy in quarantine. I just started doing stuff in my little apartment. Because curators saw me doing things, they knew they could call me for things. So then I got booked for more stuff because I think I was doing stuff just for free in my house because I really do love what I do. So to me, it wasn't an option to not do it. I just had to focus on what can I do on camera that'll hit, but it wouldn't have worked in person. So there are a lot of little things that are like that. You just have to look for that when it comes to like, how do you work as a performance artist when everything is in lockdown? I feel like I just did the last thing I'm gonna have for a while. I'm in grant writing season, so I'm currently writing a lot of grants. And the big thing that I just did with your school, with the dressing up and dressing down class for Michigan, that was interesting because it was me creating something that's costume based, so it went back to my fashion roots. And it was them performing a score that I made, but I'm not in it. So that was interesting, and I kind of think that I'm gonna start doing more stuff like that, where I take myself out of it and hope that the energy and spirit of my work is there, but I'm not always in it. The other thing I'm doing, I'm still doing quarantine performances in my apartment. So I did one literally yesterday. I tore the apartment up. And yeah, I'm gonna definitely keep doing those. There's a freedom in the experimentation in those, and it's kind of like low stakes. I feel like there's a pressure I feel when I'm at a museum that I don't feel when I perform outside, and I don't feel when I perform in my apartment. So I'm gonna play around with that, the public and the private, a lot more. And I hope to do a lot more work that has film and projection in it. In my mind, if you project me onto a building, that makes the work more visible, literally. But then also, I'm trying to find ways that what I'm concerned with in terms of race and gender and misogyny, and then other things like love, which is a big theme in my work, and connection. To make that bigger, it has to be either a bigger image of me or somehow shown in films or done by people outside of me. So I've been thinking a lot about that lately. So So I think the projects are going to get larger, actually. I think right now it's going to sound really shallow, but I'm kind of passionate about my looks. And I know that's because I'm lately playing to the camera a lot. So I've been thinking a lot more about how I look, costuming, shifting that. And then the other things I'm passionate about have nothing to do with art. Slowing down, spending time with friends. I've spent more time with my parents this year than probably ever the past like 20 years. Taking walks. Like some of the stuff that I'm into right now, low-key is boring. But like I'm into it, like all the way into it. So yeah, those are my current passions. My advice would be, and I think this gets, to some people it gets tired, but it's so true. You don't give up. Even if it's hard, even if it's like you feel like nothing is going the way you want it. If it's your passion, you do not give up. The other advice would be that if you're an artist and you're trying to go to, just to get known and seen, you have to go out. You have to go to the places. And right now everything's online, but you got to show up for those Zooms and you have to ask questions. And you should be jumping at everybody's DMs right now because people are home and more likely to answer you than ever before. Like, you have to put yourself out there. And you have to make sure that people know who you are. And you have to not be afraid to ask whoever you want to work with if you can work with them. That would be my biggest advice. Like, I think that will take you far. And I would say get a crew. You got to have friends that you support and that support you in whatever industry you're in, who can somehow help you go forward. And a lot of times, I saw Issa Rae gave a quote. I saw it on like Instagram. She was like, people try to network up. She was like, but I always network across. And I do that too, and I really think that works. I'm not saying that some big star might not help you and it might not be great, whatever. But that friend that comes up with you, that person will have your back forever. And you'll have more stories and more like fun getting to where you want to go if you have a crew. So I say try to network across the whole time. I hope that my work makes people see what's possible, because some of what I do is just weird for the sake of being weird. And I like the idea of like fantasy in the everyday. Like, I only have one crown on today, but I like to wear two. And sometimes I do wear this to the grocery store, just like this. And I think that I want people to take away from my work, yes, there is a message about like perseverance, working hard, about the treatment of black women, about the stereotypes of black women and erasing them. But there's also something about having fantasy in your everyday life that I hope people take from my work and from seeing me do my work. And I think the other thing that I hope people take from it is that you should ask for what you want. A lot of times in my performances, I'm demanding things. Even online, I'm demanding things. I'm asking for things. I'm saying what I want to say. And there's real power in asking for what you want. And hopefully, if people see me in this, they say, if she can do that, I can wear a tight dress, right? If I can do this, then you can wear something bright too. I'm hoping people take that away from it. They're like, you can just be yourself. You don't have to do this cookie cutter thing. Okay, so for the project with Michigan, I was contacted to work with the class, dressing up and dressing down. And so for that class, I was instructed to create outfits that I would want the students to wear. So I did the sketches, and they really brought the stuff to life. And then I created a score loosely based on mahogany and loosely based on some of the quarantine performances I've done in the past, particularly one where I tore up my apartment talking about I'm about to decorate, and I ripped down my blinds. And it kind of ends with me, most of the performances, me shaking the blinds and acting kind of out. Whatever. Anyway, so those two influences are combined together to create the Michigan project. I then had students, I was put in contact because Rebecca did that for me, put me in contact with the theater department. So I had people who actually that is their major. And so they were doing the musical part of it. So Tina Turner is a big influence right this second. Like, that's not an influence for like all my work. Please don't think that. But I'm really like listening to Tina Turner a lot. So I was like, You Better Be Good to Me, I thought was the perfect song to sing right now with all the violence against Black people. And I had a performance where I was spitting at the camera in quarantine, and there was something about the aggression of it that I really liked, and so I wanted the performance to begin with that aggression. Like, there's sometimes that you're kind of mad at the world about how you're treated, and you got to let that out. And so the beginning of that performance has like the spitting, but then it has this celebration aspect. It has 2 Tina Turner songs. It's just kind of a celebration of Black femmes, like and womanhood in general. And so like you have the cheerleaders, and then you have these costumes that are kind of like unusual, and it's on a football field. And I feel like a football field is a place that's usually for masculinity. So I like the idea that it's being taken over by something else. And then given all the controversy with kneeling, it's like, what does it mean to have these Black performers kind of elevated? Because everyone's kind of posed at the beginning and kind of looking fabulous. Like, what does that mean to have that on a football field? And then the painter side of me really loves the color of astroturf. Fake grass looks great next to costumes. It's a thing. I don't know anything about football, but I love the way the lines look. So there's that. The white lines with the green, visually, it's a thing. And I like the idea that when you look at the performance, you know it's a college. You see the M, you see that they're young, like it reads like a college. And that was important to me, that it was clear that it's their environment and it's a performance for them, in the sense that I wanted a celebration of the performers. And I'm really grateful for the cheerleaders, really grateful for the singers. Everyone did an amazing job in the class. Like, the costumes really came to life. And you can see if you look at the sketches versus the after look, they really came to life. So yeah, they're gonna show you the final product. Hopefully it resonates. I should also say there's a point in it where everyone falls out. They strip the clothes off, they fall down, they get back up. And for me, that's about letting go of everything. It's a reference to police violence and the violence against Black bodies that's happened, the Black violence against trans women and Black cis women, brown women. So there's a reference to that in the falling out and laying down, the stripping away. But then I wanted them to get back up and go again and dance again, because that's what we do. We get back up and we keep going, right? Even after the tragedy, even with all the racism, even with the pandemic and everything that we're up against, you keep going. So I wanted a bit of that message of keep going in the video. So that's the project.
Since, baby, since we've been together, ooh, loving you forever is all right with me. Let me be the one you come running to. All right now. I'll never be untrue. Tell me, baby, let's throughout the Cartier area.